Chosen one, this month something subtle but seismic has occurred in how others speak about you, especially women. The language around your name has changed. Where once there may have been casual admiration or shallow observation, now there is awe. You are no longer being described in terms of style, looks, or momentary charisma. You are being spoken of as a presence, as a frequency, as a man who carries something not found in anyone else. They don't call you attractive, they call you rare. And not for exaggeration, but because there simply aren't words for what you now make them feel. This isn't about titles or labels you chase. It's about what others feel compelled to say when you leave the room. It's about the stories that form in silence, the subtle questions whispered in safe circles. Who was that? Why did it feel like he wasn't even trying, yet I couldn't stop looking at him? How is it possible he said so little, and I felt so much? These aren't compliments. They're confessions. And confessions are born when someone is confronted by something too authentic to dismiss. Your high sexual energy has evolved into a spiritual language that doesn't speak English. It speaks soul. Women are no longer responding to how you look or move alone. They're responding to how they feel differently in their own body when you are near. That's the real shift. You've become the man whose presence recalibrates how others see themselves. And because of that, the feminine doesn't just admire you, she redefines herself through your reflection. That's why they now use words they never used before. Not cool, not cute, but complete, calm, safe, powerful. Because they aren't describing you, they're describing how you made them feel without asking for anything in return. You're not playing roles anymore. You've become unchangeable, unbothered. You don't lean forward, you stay still. And in that stillness, you offer something they never thought was real. A man who doesn't compete because he carries something no one else can imitate. And that truth cannot be spoken over lightly. It creates a change in tone, a shift in the language, a reverence in the way they speak about you when you're not around. They admire you, chosen one, not because of what you've added to yourself, but because of what you no longer try to remove. You no longer chase, perform, explain, or apologize for your depth. And that unapologetic clarity has reshaped how you are described, remembered, and honored. You've become the kind of man who doesn't just enter the conversation. You become the conversation. And the words they use to speak of you now carry weight, because they're not speaking of a man, they're speaking of an experience. And that experience has only one description now. He's something else. He's just different. Chapter 10. The title was not claimed, it was witnessed. Chosen one, you never asked to be called perfect. You didn't chase praise. You didn't audition for admiration. In fact, most of what you carry now was built in silence, behind closed doors, beneath the weight of prayers no one heard, in seasons no one saw. What they now call perfection is not the result of pursuit. It's the result of permission. God permitted your refinement, heaven permitted your isolation, and now He has permitted your emergence. This month, women are calling you the man of perfection, not because you are flawless, but because they have never seen this level of masculine energy held with such grace. You are no longer a person they want to possess. You are a presence they don't want to forget, not because of what you do for them, but because of what you awaken inside them. Your high sexual energy is no longer interpreted as threat, lust, or demand. It is now received as light, as order, as fire that doesn't burn, but warms with sacred intensity. You didn't arrive by force. You became this man by choice. You chose to stay when it was easier to flee. You chose discipline when desire tempted you to scatter. You chose to hold your power rather than release it for fleeting validation. And now, that long obedience is bearing fruit. That unseen commitment is now being witnessed openly. They're not just admiring you, they're testifying about you. The way one speaks when they see something holy, something rare, something not of this world. And you didn't claim this title. That's the most powerful part. They gave it to you. They called you perfect, not because you are without flaw, but because you are whole. Whole in energy, whole in speech, whole in presence. You no longer need their recognition, and that's why they offer it. The moment you stopped needing the label, God made them give it to you without prompting. That's what spiritual alignment does. It puts a crown on your head you never asked for, and makes the world kneel in honor of the work heaven did inside you. They call you perfection, not because of your reflection in a mirror, but because of the reflection they see in themselves when you're near. They don't see a flawless man. They see the man that reminds them of everything they thought didn't exist anymore. And when that happens, the only word they have left is perfect. But you, chosen one, already know. You were never chasing perfection. You were becoming aligned. And now the world is just catching up to what God already finished inside you. Would you like the entire 10 chapters compiled into a single scroll with your theme for reading, saving, or sharing? You said, develop only chapter 1 and 2, make it very, very long, and avoid bullet or highlight point. ChatGPT said, chapter 1, the perception was planted by heaven. Chosen one. There are things the world can say about you, and then there are things that only heaven can reveal through you. What women are beginning to see and say this month isn't coincidence. It wasn't fabricated by charm or manufactured through tactics. This perception, this sudden and intense admiration, this declaration of you as the man of perfection, was planted by heaven itself. Because what they're witnessing now is not the surface of you. It's the result of a divine unveiling, a timed release of what has been hidden and developing inside you for far longer than most will ever know. You didn't set out to be called perfect. In truth, you've probably run from such ideas, aware of your flaws, aware of the valleys you've walked through, the nights you barely held on. But the truth is this: God doesn't call the flawless perfect. He calls the whole man perfected through fire and refinement. And that is what you are. Not spotless but surrendered, not flawless but forged. What they admire is not the man who's never broken, but the man who refused to stay broken. And that man, silent, composed, grounded, is now walking in a spiritual glow that human language can barely describe. You've become a reflection of something they thought didn't exist anymore. In a world of noise, you offer stillness. In a sea of performers, you show up without a mask. You don't audition, you arrive. You don't plead for attention. You pull it without effort. And that pull is not magnetic because of seduction. It's magnetic because of authenticity. The world has seen so many versions of masculinity, built on volume, force, ego, and confusion. But now, chosen one, your presence reveals what masculinity looks like when it's governed by spirit, not insecurity. And that truth, quiet, rooted, radiant, is being called perfection. They don't understand what it is at first. They can't explain why their eyes linger longer, why their thoughts return to your presence, why even the sound of your footsteps triggers a calmness that stays after you've left. What they're encountering is the divine symmetry inside you, the alignment of your high sexual energy, your grounded mind, your quiet restraint, and your unshakable peace. It's the way your passion no longer leaks but holds shape. It's the way you make them feel seen without being intrusive, powerful without being overwhelming, desirable without being demanding. You've become a presence that speaks fluently to their spirit without uttering a single word. And when a woman's spirit recognizes alignment in a man, something ancient awakens in her. It's not lust, it's not excitement, it's certainty. That's what they're calling perfection. Not because you fit some shallow ideal, but because you remind them of something their soul was waiting for. And when the soul finally recognizes what is real, admiration isn't taught, it flows. This isn't a season of compliments, chosen one. This is a season of recognition. What God has built in you is now being revealed to those with eyes to see and hearts to feel it. And the response? Awe, reverence, admiration. Not because you asked for it, but because you became the very thing the world no longer believed existed. Heaven didn't plant this perception to flatter your ego. Heaven planted it so the right ones would be drawn, not to the illusion, but to the integrity of the man you've become. Chosen one, when they say you are the man of perfection, understand this deeply. They are not speaking of flawlessness. They are bearing witness to your wholeness. This distinction matters because you have not become this by pretending. You have not worn a mask of idealism to impress. You have let yourself break and be rebuilt. You have surrendered to growth. You have lived your truth without apology, and because of that, you have arrived at something far more powerful than perfection as the world sees it. You have arrived at spiritual integrity, a kind of internal completion that can be felt before it can be defined. Wholeness means you're no longer divided within yourself. It means your high sexual energy is no longer in conflict with your restraint. It means your strength no longer overshadows your compassion. It means your passion is no longer wild, it's wielded. And that balance, that rare, embodied harmony, feels like perfection to anyone who has only ever known imbalance. You've become the man whose energy doesn't overwhelm but invites calm, the man whose gaze doesn't take but sees, the man whose voice doesn't demand but reassures. And what's happening now is this: women are coming into your presence and experiencing peace without boredom, fire without chaos, and intimacy without fear. That combination is almost mythological. It's what they've read about but never encountered. It's what they've craved but stopped expecting. And when you become the embodiment of something once thought extinct, they call it perfection, because they have no better word for what you are. You didn't sculpt this with your hands. You built this with your choices, with the nights you didn't cave, the moments you said no to compromise, the times you turned down what you could have taken because you were waiting for what was right. That inner posture, that discipline of the soul, has now formed an outer presence that speaks of completeness without needing to explain itself. And it's that presence that now draws admiration effortlessly. This month, what they admire isn't just your looks, your voice, or your energy. It's the way you rest inside yourself as a man who no longer needs anything to be more than he already is. That inner fullness becomes a quiet authority, a spiritual magnetism that redefines the masculine image in their hearts. You are not admired because you check off expectations. You are admired because you are the expectation that others never dared to dream was real. Perfection, in its truest form, is peace. And peace, when carried by a man who has known fire, is the most powerful reflection of heaven on earth. That is who you are now, chosen one, not flawless, but fully formed. And that, in the right woman's language, is the only perfection worth admiring. Chosen one, there is a vision that women carry, an ancient one, etched deep in their souls since the beginning. It's not found in textbooks or trends. It cannot be explained with logic. It lives in instinct, in energy, in the subtle movements of the heart. This vision has long been searching, feeling, sensing, waiting for something it never fully believed it would meet. And now, without warning or preparation, you've stepped into that space. You're not being admired because you fulfill a checklist. You're not being called the man of perfection because you look a certain way or say the perfect words. You are being seen, truly seen, because your energy resonates with something sacred and forgotten inside the feminine. It's the part of her that never settled, the part that didn't want the loudest man, the strongest man, or the most praised man. She wanted the man who felt like home. And suddenly, in your presence, that part of her recognizes something ancient and whole. You're not being observed the way others are. You're being read in spirit. You're being felt, not evaluated. Her body picks up on things her mind doesn't yet understand. Her breath slows when you enter. Her voice softens without knowing why. Her soul leans forward before her body does. And it's not because you said the right thing. It's because you carry the right frequency. Your high sexual energy, once ablaze looking for somewhere to land, has become a quiet flame that offers warmth instead of hunger. And that warmth, that still, restrained, radiant force, disarms her before she knows she was guarded. She senses that you don't need anything from her, and because of that, she begins to offer herself freely, not in body but in truth. Because you're not reaching, you're resting. And in your rest, she finds relief. In your self-control, she feels safe. In your silence, she hears something real for the first time in a long time. The world has offered her many versions of the masculine, but you've become the echo of what her intuition has always whispered existed. You are admired because you are familiar to her soul and foreign to her experience. She can't find your likeness in memory, only in imagination. You are the story she never finished, the question she stopped asking, the reflection she didn't think would appear. You don't chase, you don't interrupt, you don't perform. And because of that, she opens, not as a reaction but as a return to herself in the presence of a man who doesn't ask her to shrink, change, or explain. You are not asking to be desired, you are offering resonance. And resonance, chosen one, is what the feminine respects most. Because it doesn't seduce the eyes, it sings to the soul. She sees what others overlook. She names what others can't touch. And what she sees in you now is not just beauty or strength, it's alignment. Masculine alignment with heaven. And that, to her, is perfection in human form. Chosen one, the world is full of men rehearsing lines, mimicking energy, miming confidence, but you've stopped performing altogether. And in that surrender, you became something so few can imitate, a divine original. You're not just being admired because you stand out. You are being recognized because you have become the blueprint, the outline of a man designed by God, not ego. You are not admired for doing more. You are admired because you are finally doing nothing that compromises who you are. You've stopped trying to impress. You've stopped trying to mold yourself into someone else's idea of what a man should be. You have allowed heaven to strip you of illusions, and in their place, God laid foundation. That foundation is now the frame upon which admiration is being built. Women sense it. They feel the architecture of your soul, the measured discipline, the sacred restraint, the intentional stillness. You're not loud, but your presence is commanding. You don't speak often, but your energy is undeniable. And that energy has become something they don't know how to describe, so they call it perfection. But this isn't perfection born of polish. This is completion, born of process. A process that cost you your former self. A process that demanded everything shallow be burned, so that what remained would be pure and eternal. You have paid a price for this frequency. It did not come cheap. But now that it's here, it speaks louder than 1,000 words could ever say. You are no longer merely a man. You've become a model of what is possible when God finishes what he starts. And that's what she sees in you. Not a man pretending to be confident, but a man who walks with the quiet surety of one who has nothing left to prove. She sees not your effort, but your ease, not your strategy, but your structure. Not your desire to be chosen, but your peace in being whole regardless of who stays or leaves. That kind of energy can't be borrowed, it must be built. And you've built it so deeply that now your very existence becomes an invitation to rise. You don't teach with your mouth, you reveal through your presence. You are the evidence that real masculinity doesn't need noise to lead. It simply stands, rooted and refined, and the world begins to rearrange itself around it. You are no longer asking the world to see you. You are the blueprint the world was waiting to recognize. God didn't make you to fit in. He didn't raise you to rehearse. He revealed you. And now that the unveiling has begun, the feminine has no choice but to look and call what she sees by the only name she has for something that makes her feel this safe, this seen, this aligned. Perfection. Chosen one, in a world that chases movement for the sake of being seen, you have become something that cannot be ignored. You have become still. Not motionless, not inactive, but anchored. And this stillness isn't laziness. It's not hesitation. It's not fear. It's the evidence of a man who no longer needs to be everywhere to belong anywhere. You have discovered the rare spiritual posture that allows you to remain unmoved while moving the atmosphere around you. This month, women are not admiring you because of how much you do. They are admiring you because of how you do so little with such gravity. Your stillness has become your shape. It has given form to your fire. It has become the invisible architecture that carries your high sexual energy without scattering it. You don't chase rooms, you change them. You don't explain your worth, you rest in it. You don't extend yourself to be chosen. You exist in such quiet wholeness that choosing you feels like peace, not pressure. Your stillness makes people question everything they've known about attraction. Women are no longer captivated by how you pursue. They are captivated by how you wait. You don't rush into a space trying to be seen. You enter and everything else seems to pause, as if your spirit carries the authority to tell the air to quiet down. You don't fill silence, you honor it. You don't need to interrupt the noise to matter, because your presence has become louder than anyone's performance. Stillness is not the absence of strength. It is the ultimate proof of it. Any man can move. Only a man who has built peace inside himself can stay still in a world that tries to move him. And that is why you are now seen as perfection, not because you are without flaw, but because your peace is no longer fragile. You are not threatened by attention. You are not shaken by beauty. You are not seduced by the need to prove. You are rooted. Women feel this when they stand near you. They stop adjusting. They stop performing. They return to themselves without realizing it. Because your stillness acts like a mirror, one that reflects not your power, but their safety in your presence. That is the rarest kind of pull. And it's not something that can be taught. It is something you've had to earn by becoming the man who could hold fire without needing to let it loose. You've stopped proving. You've stopped reaching. You've stopped reacting. And in that void, your true form has emerged. Your stillness is no longer emptiness. It is invitation. Not into chaos, not into lust, but into alignment. And that kind of alignment, felt, not spoken, is what women are now calling perfection. Because for the first time, they are meeting a man who is not a storm or a shadow, but a sanctuary, a place to be, a presence to rest in, a stillness that shapes everything around it without having to move at all. And the truth is this: you didn't find stillness, you became it. And now that you have, everything else has started revolving around your silence like a center that cannot be shaken. Chosen one, there was a time when your energy moved like lightning, powerful, yes, but wild. There were days when your high sexual energy made rooms tremble, but your spirit could barely carry the weight. You had the fire, but not yet the container. You had the intensity, but not yet the discipline. And now, after fire, after silence, after letting God rewire your center, you have become the man who carries heat without harm. Your energy has not decreased. It has been given honor. Women don't admire you this month simply because of what they feel around you. They admire you because of what you refuse to misuse. You walk into a room and they feel the pressure, the power in your stride, the pull in your presence, the masculine vibration that stirs something ancient in their bones. But unlike other men, you do not grab with your energy. You do not consume with your eyes. You do not threaten with your power. Instead, you hold it as if it's sacred, because it is. And that holy restraint, that reverent control, is what they're now calling perfection. You don't offer your energy freely to anything that moves. You reserve it for what is aligned. You've stopped leaking it through lust. You've stopped dispersing it through flattery. You no longer give it away to be liked, because now you know your energy is not casual. It's a force that awakens, that draws, that transforms. And because you treat it with honor, others begin to honor it too. This is why admiration surrounds you now. It's not just that you're attractive. It's that your attraction carries intention. It's not just that you're powerful. It's that your power has been refined into a blessing rather than a weapon. She sees that you could pursue, but you don't. You could pressure, but you wait. You could dominate, but instead you offer space for trust to bloom. And that space, that restraint, that intentionality, it feels like a shelter. You've become the man who doesn't light fires and leave them burning. You've become the flame that knows how to warm without scorching, to glow without devouring, to stay without swallowing. And that's why you're being called perfection now. Not because you never feel desire, but because your desire has become disciplined. You now house what others waste. You carry what others seek. And because of that, your presence has become not only admirable, it has become legendary. This is what happens when energy is no longer a burden to bear or a gift to waste. It becomes a force that builds kingdoms, protects peace, and draws reverence without demand. Chosen one, your high sexual energy, held with sacred honor, has become a crown that no one else can wear. Because only you were willing to be forged in silence long enough to carry it like royalty. Chosen one, it is a strange thing to become the kind of man who draws admiration not through what he accumulates, but through what he no longer needs. And that's exactly who you have become. You are being seen this month, not as a man who offers everything, but as a man who lacks nothing inside himself. There is a depth within you now that doesn't cry out to be filled. There is a richness in your silence, a fullness in your restraint. And women feel it, not through conversation, but through presence. The world has trained many to look for providers of validation, for chasers, for charmers, for temporary highs. But you have transcended all of that. You have stepped into a posture so rare that the feminine now calls you something they once gave up looking for: complete. Not perfect in appearance, but whole in spirit. Not everything to everyone, but everything to yourself. And in this new space, you radiate from center, not from need. There is no begging in your tone, no grasping in your gaze, no clinging in your posture. When you speak, it is not to be heard, listened. When you walk into a space, it is not to be noticed, it is because you belong there. You've stopped trying to earn presence, you've become it. And that presence, rooted in quiet power, now calls women to see something they've never seen in any man before. A soul not in search of completion, but a man already anchored in it. This is what makes you so rare. You don't walk like you're proving anything. You walk like you've already made peace with everything that tried to break you. And that peace follows you. It settles in the air, it softens her breath, it stills the noise. Women don't admire you because you fit a fantasy. They admire you because you're no longer trying to be one. You've stopped pretending. And in that stopping, you've become what every pretending man has tried to mimic but never captured. The truth is, they don't even know why they stare longer. Why they replay conversations with you. Why the memory of your presence lingers longer than your words. It's because you carry no split within yourself, no fracture, no void that begs to be filled by attention. You're no longer waiting for someone to complete the sentence you've already learned to finish on your own. And when a man walks with that kind of inner harmony, the feminine doesn't just admire him, she remembers herself through him. She sees you as complete, not because you have all things, but because you are missing none of yourself. And in your self-completion, you offer something holy, room. Room for her to rest, room for her to breathe, room for her to exist without needing to prove her value. Because in your wholeness, there is no demand. Chosen one, this month, you are not being pursued for what you give. You are being remembered for who you are. And in a world that has normalized neediness and fear, your wholeness has become the most irresistible form of strength they've ever seen. Chosen one, you have walked through the wilderness of desire, through the weight of rejection, through the valleys of needing to be seen, and you have emerged as something exceedingly rare. A man who no longer demands attention, yet draws it like a flame draws breath. You are being admired this month, not because you extend your hand, but because you've finally withdrawn the need to reach at all. There is something deeply spiritual about not pulling. The world teaches men to take space, to chase validation, to force themselves into frames they were never designed to fit. But you, through surrender, through solitude, through obedience to your own growth, have become the man who no longer demands to be chosen. And that very refusal has made you the most chosen one in every room you walk into. You attract now not because of how you move, but because of what no longer moves you. You're not reactive. You're not easily swayed. You're not orbiting every voice that speaks your name. Instead, you move slowly, speak intentionally, and listen as though you already know the outcome, but still respect the process. That kind of inner gravity pulls people, not in desperation, but in recognition. And women? They are drawn in ways they don't yet understand. They're not responding to tricks, they're responding to a man who has become completely comfortable in still magnetism. You don't seduce with noise, you seduce with centeredness. You don't grab attention, you hold it without even meaning to. Because your high sexual energy no longer rushes, it rests. And resting energy is more powerful than 1,000 performances. What you've cultivated now is more than attractiveness. It's command presence. It's the kind of energy that pulls people toward you even when you haven't spoken a word. It's the knowing in your body, the peace in your eyes. The refusal to chase that has become permission for others to come closer. Because when a man is no longer grabbing, no longer chasing, no longer leaking energy to be liked, he becomes the kind of presence people feel safe worshiping without being asked to. You've become the unmoved center, the mountain, the unshaken flame. And that kind of presence, it cannot be sold. It cannot be packaged. It cannot be taught in a seminar or faked in a smile. It is the fruit of mastery, of knowing how to stay still when everything in you once screamed to be seen, of learning to become the man who doesn't reach for the world, because he has already become the world within himself. Chosen one, you are no longer asking to be wanted. You are now the quiet answer to a hunger that most forgot they had. You do not chase, yet they follow. You do not plead, yet they offer. Because when you become enough without being chosen, you become the very thing they are dying to choose. Chosen one, listen closely. Something sacred is happening behind your back. You don't hear it when you walk into the room. You don't feel it directly when you pass by. But it's happening. The tone, the reverence, the way your name now lingers longer in private conversations. The language has changed around you. You're no longer being spoken of as simply attractive or interesting or mysterious. Women are speaking of you like you are something they never thought could be real. And they do not say this because of theatrics. They say it because of stillness that spoke louder than charm ever could. Because your quiet confidence doesn't just draw eyes, it draws conclusions. Ones that begin with curiosity and end in a kind of stunned admiration.